Hey all, thank you again for joining me on episode 2. The focus here on this episode is going to be on relationships. It's important to talk about, I think, because, as a 35-year-old, now looking back and reflecting when I was, even starting in my first relationship at 19, nobody teaches you, there's no guidelines in regards to, healthy relationships or healing through any traumas of your past that might impact your future relationship. And I think I want to go on to this topic basically and even discuss my experiences of how the learning process is my errors in those relationships, and even those toxic relationships that you have also gone through, and the later, I guess, effects, the residuals of those relationships that we experience through toxicity. So I guess the first thing I want to talk about is the learning process of it. I've been in total about 4 relationships long term. I'm talking about 2 to 3 years, and even one that I was even pushing towards later on that I hoped it was going to eventually reach that point of marriage. So I think what I want to get into is why my belief was, always to seek long-term relationships, and because I also seek them for substance, of course, and I think that's ultimately we all look for, the end goal, which is marriage, family, kids, and to establish something, with somebody, to have that company and have that presence long term. But I think where it came for me personally is, I saw a lot through pop culture. I saw it through, movies, of course, music, and I guess your view on relationships is that, it involves spending a lifetime with somebody, raising a family and kids, and then I think I saw that through like these fairy, and also like you expect it to be very fairy tale, like it's all going to be glitz and glamour, and it's always going to be peaceful, and it's going to be fun, and it's always going to be a constant fun ride in life. But I think what I didn't learn is that there's a lot that goes into it. There's a lot of complexity in it that, two people coming in together and intertwining, and both worlds coming in, and you're not really, also, I guess you don't have the tools, and you don't have the right resources and are prepared to handle another life at the same time. And with your own life too, you have your own issues going on. It could be internally, could be externally. So my thing was that I remember even I have an older brother. I saw him in his first relationship, and I saw how they went about, and even my parents' relationship, and you start to learn these things. And even then, I was listening to a lot of music at that age. At around 16 is when I really started listening to music, and you listen to the R&B music, you see how they express their love to their partner, and then you're just like enamored by this feeling that that you can actually receive this type of love. And I also saw it through movies. I'm a big movie buff, but I love all types, of course, genres. But I also do love a good rom-com romance movies. That's like very much that stands out like for me. And I remember my first movies I would watch, even through Disney, Disney Lion King. You see Nala and Simba have like this love relationship, that infatuation for each other. And then also moving on to like, there's The Notebook, there's A Walk to Remember. There's always those quotes that, love is like the wind, you can't see it but you can feel it. Like I remember seeing that, and I was just entrapped. Like I just was hypnotized by that feeling that two humans can receive, and it's like a rush, and it's a drug in that case, that that you guys become addicted to each other. So I saw that, and I remember now through watching that experience till now, I was like, I wasn't properly guided. Like these movies and this music, it kind of exposes you to really a fantasy, to say, and not to say you can't receive it. It's just that it's it's way harder than that, like to sustain something for 20 plus years or 10 plus years, whatever it could be in that period of course of your life, that it's hard to maintain it. Like they don't teach you about the work you have to put in for both the relationship and yourself, and the how complex it is. One human could be, going through a lot of trauma in their lives and a lot of challenges, and working through those challenges together. And it's and also it's just like the level of communication that two people may have and unfortunately haven't learned. That's like one of the hardest things, that these two people have to come together, and people can base it on interest and compatibility, but it's also takes the work to really build each other's worlds and come together and talk through a partnership, right? And I think that's what I didn't learn, and I think that process was really hard. Especially my first relationship was at 19, and even looking then, I wasn't well equipped to take on somebody else, and what the issues that they had, and also what issues I had. And I think we have to kind of also, not to say omit or kind of push what music and movies sometimes put out. It's that we have to take a step back and be like, okay, this is my life. What are some errors that I have, or some faults that I need to grow on, or need to hopefully get better at? Because once that person comes in, you're going to see that person either wants this type of love, or wants to receive these type of this type of emotions from somebody. And I think that's important, that we have to go through our own growth process in it. And I think going through relationship, we start to evaluate more, and that's what I did eventually towards my last relationship, which was my fourth relationship, that I decided to take therapy. I decided to, I have to see what patterns and see what type of partners I'm choosing, even internally myself. What was it that I haven't corrected or healed from? And that's very important to be, to be self-aware, and have that, that emotional intelligence that a lot of people unfortunately are not taught at a very young age, or even through their process of growing in life and maturing. And I'm not here to tell you, I'm not giving this relationship advice, by the way. I'm not here as a professional or somebody who's like, purely a healthy person. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that it's taken me to work, and it's taken me some time to really process all of it, and then eventually kind of write things down and be like, okay, how can I now grow as a person? So that relationship I'm in, the next relationship I'm in, and the one I'm currently in, of course, is how can I be better at for this person, to show that even for myself, that I'm providing the maximum, I guess, the maximum effort, the maximum work, that shows that this is going to be a true partnership for us to grow, right? And I guess the second thing I had to do was, through that learning process, is basically see the patterns and go through my even traumas and insecurities. And I think therapy for me really exposed that, and I'm very appreciative of therapy. I said that in my last video in regards to anxiety, that I had to dive into like my parents' relationship growing up, what I viewed and what I saw there. I saw my brother's relationship, and even my emotional gaps that I didn't receive as a kid. And then you start to see how this can transfer over to a relationship. I remember seeing that my mom in her relationship with my father, that it was a person that had a lot of pain, and I always wanted to help her. I always wanted to hold her. I wanted to really sit down with her and fix everything I could, and have control of somebody else's emotions, that they can find happiness. And I remember seeing that, and like then becoming an adult, and then my first relationship at 19, I become fully depending off the person's emotions, and then I also see how damaged a person is. And so what I do is, I want to, like my therapist had said, I seek injured birds, and I just want to do everything I can to help them in this life, and really much just see that, there's potential, see there's change in a person. And what I don't recognize is that that hurts you along the way as a person as well, that you see some, like, of course, I want to also preach that you have to support each other, right? You have to support another person, and that's true love right there, is really given all that you can in that relationship. But you also have to recognize when it's become a little bit detrimental to your life. And it's hard because you invest time, you love this person, and you want to help them to the maximum capability, right? And then you start to see how how it affects your life, and that's a lot, right? That's a lot that we have to take in. And I'm sure a lot of us go through multiple years and just taking in somebody else's issues and someone else's pain and the damage they received or they inflicted, right? But it's also very much that it's self damaging to ourselves, and it also creates, it devalues you sometimes in a way, right? And you have to recognize a lot through this period. And I think the other thing is it's the insecurities that we have as people, right? Like I mentioned, with our emotional gaps that we may have not received maybe from our parents, or we lack certain things, or even through our toxic relationships later on, these insecurities are more exposed, or they've grown through this, right? And I think it's important to look within and think about all your insecurities that you have and try to grow and heal from them. Because if you really don't, of course, I'm not going to stay here and cure everything, work on you and you'll be fine. No, these insecurities sometimes never go away in life. Sometimes they're permanent in a way. But I'm saying how we can, take it from a high insecurity down to a medium insecurity at least, because that's a lot for a partner to try to help fix, right? And that's what we try to do in those cases. So it's very much a lot that we have to sit down and process and really reflect, because ultimately, if you don't, it becomes a roller coaster ride for you in that relationship, and you're going to start to see how it does damage you at the end, right? And I had to learn that through my process of like, okay, what have I done in these relationships? What are, now as an adult here, how can I see somebody who comes into my life and see that this person has worked on themselves? Because my patterns were the seek the injured birds, seek these type of people that unfortunately had gone through a lot of pain in their lives, to other instability, they can't self-regulate. And I remember going through those process of like, there was, you reach the high point of you're in love with them. You're so focused on, that rush of just the infatuation. And when you get a reality check and you start to see like the realness happening, like those challenges of arguments and fights, and how somebody has maybe mental issues, or they have some previous past issues from their life that was very traumatic in their life. And it's so hard to take on as a person, right? But we have to really, sometimes I didn't learn that in the process of all this, that we have to be very selfish in ways. I don't want to say very selfish, but selfish in a way. Because if you don't if you only focus on a person and start taking care of them, you'll start to less take care of yourself. And it becomes like where you're looking for, this person's health more than your own health. And I'm here to tell you that you have to have a real balance for that, and a very much good awareness for that, because it's going to be a lot to take on, and you have to really you have to put your worth first at certain points in your life. And you're going to see that it's going to then switch your patterns over to finding somebody healthy, somebody who like allows you to grow as a human and uplifts you and supports you in the right ways, right? But it's all hard. There's no guidelines to this. I find it's just like parenting. Sometimes relationships, there's so many advices, so many type of people that give out advice. But I think you have to follow the right steps, of course, and there are some good steps to follow. And I think it's taken me years as well as a person to really see what, how like, especially with the regards to your own, with selfishness and inner growth. Of course, these things are not very much taught at a young age, because you're just so focused on the love experience mainly, and you're focused on that rush that you receive from it. And I'm glad I took the time really to reflect on my flaws, especially, right? So the next part is it's healing and growing from the past that I want to talk about. It's the experience of taking that work to grow as a person. And I like I said, through therapy, I really had to dive into those experiences of my past, right? And I think I did that growth. I did that growing experience because I was tired. I was exhausted, burnt out to say, from those past relationships I was in. Like, I remember just like at a certain point, I was like, I don't want to date anymore. I'm tired. I'm exhausted from all of it. But I knew at the end of it, I wanted something long term. I wanted my goal to, meet somebody and have them permanent in my life. So I had to really focus on that. And like I mentioned, I saw through the experiences of my parents, and like, as growing up from a Latino household and seeing, coming from an immigrant background, unfortunately, you put your focus on their relationship, right? You see, unfortunately, my parents weren't very much the most lovey relationship. I think at that point in that generation was all about survival, and there wasn't really time to full on communicate and really dive into their own traumas to work on their relationship. And I think I had to take that and just be like, okay, how can I grow from that, and how can I let go of those internal issues that I saw with them, and how can I now improve as myself. And I don't want to even talk bad about my parents. At the end, I know they love each other. It's just they've unfortunately just didn't put those marriage issues first. They put their kids first. They put the fact of surviving here in Canada, and I appreciate that, of course. But I think as an adult, I see how that will later on impact you. I think more long term, right? And so healing took me a while, of course. And after those relationships, I remember writing down one day on my journal, just being like, okay, this is what I experienced in my first relationship, my second, my third, and my fourth. And I was like, okay, I see the patterns that I was choosing. I see how now I have to heal from it, and how I can now grow from those relationships, because it really takes you. It really takes a very aware person to be like, okay, this is the errors I committed, but I also let those things go, especially when a person hurts you, especially when they cause you that type of pain that really, it's like a stab to the heart. It's like like sometimes it very much sticks with you, and then it like just rolls over and it transfers over to your own life, your future life, basically. So I think it's important to heal and grow and take your time, like, in that process, because there's no rush to this. Like, we all want that, of course. We all want that experience of finding somebody and having that, because I know as humans, we all long for a long-term partner, a lifetime partner. And it's important to heal and grow and do it in your time, in your process. Just remember, there's ways you can seek help. I'm preaching towards therapy here, because it's such a healthy way of somebody pinpointing basically those things that you've experienced in your past, and how it's damaged you, right? But I don't think, personally, through coping with drinking, drugs, even going through the process of being, promiscuous, I'm going to have myself multiple partners and this will fix everything. It really doesn't fix everything. I've gone through my process of that too, where I was like, I'm going to go ahead and just, live the single life and experience the flings and whatever. But I saw that for a period, and it took me to a dark place. I remember just being in like it becomes a terrible habit. And I was like, this isn't me. And I don't enjoy this. I know that now I started to see the clearer picture that I want to work on myself, but I also didn't want that life, because I guess you have to experiment along the way too, and see what's for you, see what's, gonna work in your process. But you have to do these things in a healthy way, and nobody teaches that too. Nobody teaches you along the way that, you have to really cry out these emotions. You have to really, take this pain that you have and try your best to clear it from you, because that's going to create some peace for you. And then for your partner that comes into your life, you don't have to then project and throw that at them, and then they're like, what the heck, I didn't sign up for this. So you have to really go through that process of healing and growing. So I hope you can take your time and really focus on what's good for you in your future, because it's very short what we have here. And I think I took the time after that fourth relationship, because I was so focused in relationships in the past of just moving on to the next relationship, because I was dependent and I didn't grow from that. I didn't grow from that experience. And now that I'm here, I'm like more independent because I took the time. I'm more focused on myself, and I didn't know any of that. And I think that's the experience of healing and growing. So it is very important. Now, the next thing I do want to talk about is toxic relationships and my experiences with them, because like I said, coming from healing and growing, toxic relationships do really it almost gives you a PTSD in life. Like I'm not going to go in detail of every single one I've gone through, but I think it was a process of like, oh my God, I don't know what else to do, and I'm so in love with this person that now I can't leave. So it becomes very, very along the way, it just causes so much pain and damage that you're so unaware of, that you really have to be a strong person individually. Like, just be like, I need to escape this and run. But like, it sounds bad when somebody's going through their own stuff and you're like, but I see the potential, I see the investment I put in, right? So here's story time on my first relationship. I was 19, by the way, so this happened many years ago, where I'm now like, I've been over this situation. I've managed to heal and grow, like I said, through that process, and I really needed that. So because that experience of my first love, to say, was like, it's like a story that I was like, oh my God, I gotta really heal from this situation. So I was 19 at that age, and I basically had met this girl here at my church that I was attending at that point in life. And I basically saw her, like, went gaga for her. I was like, oh God, okay. And we had gone on several dates, and then eventually we made it a permanent, like exclusive. We made it that relationship. So it was about 2 years I was with her, and through the experiences of like seeing her mental issues, I'm not going to go into detail in regards to her issues, but she did suffer through previous traumas of her father being physically abusive, her own self and her past of being essayed, and also that I saw how I had started to try to help her and support her, and those are very hard things as a 19-year-old to navigate, because this person was also in a way suicidal. And those things, I was like, oh my God, like, how do I process this? How do I now put her first instead of myself first? And then you're like, oh, this person needs some medical attention. But it's hard because she obviously didn't seek that. She was also that age as well, like very young. So it was hard to navigate that as a 19-year-old. So I'm gonna start. I want to give more information, more details about it. But she then, she came from a Mexican background. Her parents, they all had moved from Mexico to here, and they were trying to get their visas here. And at that time, I think a lot, like the Canadian government was denying a lot of visa applications. So what had happened is that she eventually, they got deported. So that process there was like, I was losing her, And I was like, okay, maybe we can make this work long term, eventually push towards marriage, and she comes back to Canada. So she had gone deported with her family. Luckily, she was obviously over 18, and she was actually born in California at that time. And so what had happened is that that time that she got deported, I think it was about a week after, I had found out she had cheated on me, and I lost it. I completely lost it. Because I bent over backwards for her. I was a very much supportive person through her process. But cheating for me, it's when somebody is not loyal to you, it hurts everything entirely on your body. So it was very damaging to me. So at that point, after that week that she was gone, and I had to find out through friends, and then obviously confront her. I found out and I lost my mind. I was like, I don't want to be with you. I don't want ever to be with a person like you. So, anyways, fast forward. It was about a few days after that situation occurred. I got a call from a detention center here in Toronto, and she had basically had taken a flight. I don't know how she managed to do this, by the way. She managed to take a flight, come to Toronto, and I got this call stating that she was at a detention center. It was her personally calling me, and I told her, I'm like, what are you doing here? Like, you need to leave. Like, you cannot. You just got deported. Your family did. So anyways, I got that call, and I immediately folded. By the way, I was like, okay, I'm gonna come see you at this detention center, and literally saw her through a glass basically, and we had each other's, like, the phones that you see in jails, like, you're talking, being like, what do you do? I was like, what are you doing here? She's like, I didn't want to lose you. And I fell, like, quickly for that. I was like, oh my goodness, I'm gonna do everything in my power now to be with her. And because look at the sacrifice she made. She flew over from Mexico to here, even though she was just deported. So since she was actually born in California, she chose to actually go to California and stay there. She didn't really have family there. I didn't even know I had family there, but I did. So we had made a plan that I was like, okay, I'm going to meet you in California. I'll try to stay there for a few weeks. And my mom's sister was there actually. And I had called her. I'm like, I'm coming to visit. And so is, my ex in this case is going to be there. If we can stay there at your place, I would be grateful. So I ended up staying there anyways, and I stayed there for, like, that period I was there. And to my knowledge, to not knowing, and to not my knowledge, I didn't know that my ex had asked my aunt basically if she can stay permanent with her. And I didn't even know this. I was like, this caught me off guard completely. And so she stayed there through that period, because she didn't really have family, and she was just, by herself. And she got to know my family there. Anyways, so I started finding out that her and my cousin basically had started dating, and totally unaware of this. And that was a shock to me, because I thought we were still kind of talking. At that point we were doing, like, the Skype calls, even emailing and text messages, doing everything there. And finding that out, I was like, I'm done with this person. I never want to hear from them. I never want them to. They just don't exist to me anymore. So I cut that out, literally cut it all out, and I said, good luck. So fast forward again, a few more years goes by, and now that I hear that they have a kid. And that was hilarious to me, by the way. I laugh at it now. So that happened, and I think the stinger for me out of all of it was we had kid names, and she named the kid after our kid name, like the kid name that we created basically in our little weird fantasy. So that was that toxic relationship, that it was very much I didn't have that level of awareness from it, basically, to see that this person's needs medical attention. She needs professional consultations and stuff like that. But also, this person, we were both young at the same time, and I'm not gonna just excuse her actions, obviously, but I should have put myself first. I should have been like, okay, I'm taking that step back to, you need to do you need to go through your growing process, your trials and tribulations that you need to deal with. And I should have left. I know I should have left, and I think I needed that hard slap to the face of being like, okay, this is not the person that you should be choosing in the future. You should be, looking for somebody who's very regulated, who's very stable mentally, especially, right? And I think I had to learn the hard way. That story for me, it was like I hold dear to, because I'm like, oh, it's such a great story to tell sometimes. But I'm sure everybody has gone through that experience of those toxic relationships, of being like, wow, this is super unhealthy for me now. And we feel trapped. We feel like, we've given everything we could to this person. And then that's why we hold on to them, because we're just like, I don't want to leave them. Like, I see the potential in this. I see that with change, I can help this person grow and develop, right? So it's on you afterwards to really take that step and being like, okay, now I need to look for a healthy and stable relationship next, because what I saw there and experienced there was very painful and damaging to me. And I saw who I was becoming as a person, and that was not the person I saw. You see a version of yourself where you're like, a person that comes in should be supportive and uplifting, like I said, and helps you mature, helps you through even your own challenges. And then you can see, and they will also, like, you'll grow so much with that type of person, that you'll become this better version of yourself, and you'll let go of all the past insecurities with this person, this past, pain that we have. Because that's number one, I find, especially when you're looking for somebody, when you're in those healthy stable relationships, that you got to search for these people with the right intentions, with the right right goals and mindset, that they see, that they want you as a person to also grow and to be healthy. And I think that's important, because our past, creates us creates our future, basically. And I think it's once you start to see, like, hey, I've suffered this way, now I have to, these are growing pains, basically, and you start to keep stepping up in that way, that like, you are forced to, not forced, but you are in a way influenced by the world and society, right? And then you choose certain people that, unfortunately, you don't know their history, you don't know their past. So you have to talk about that, because I find talking about history and past with a person, it's you really start to see how that story created them now, right? Their present. Because once you start to see that and they communicate that to you, you're like, oh crap, oh man, I should have really asked more questions. I really should have done this. Because you hear in those cases with marriages and how quickly divorces happened, and if you don't see eye to eye with a person, or you're not on the same page in the level of communication, how you work on it, the growth within both of you, and you start to see how things go in a downward spiral. They go out of control in those cases, and you really have to talk with that person. You really have to grow with them. And I think it's, what I want to say is communication and respect and boundaries within each other, because communication is number one, I find, in all healthy relationships. Because once you're able to communicate so well with a person, you really can battle a lot. Like, I think I was reading Jay Shetty's book, 8 Rules of Love. It teaches you, how your fighting styles, of how two people immediately fix it. And you start to see that if your both styles are different, you got to come to a middle place and being like, okay, this is where you have your struggles with, and these are my struggles as well, my weaknesses and these cases. And then you start to see what your strengths are in that relationship, and that's how you come together and communicate that. Because once you do that, you start to see, okay, now we can go through every challenge together, and how we can respect each other in these ways, that we're not just just pushing one person aside, or this person's not looking at my perspective, or that person's not, like, they only focus on their own perspective. So you do need to really communicate that. You need to really respect those lines for each other, and that helps you at the end, right? It helps you grow, it helps you further that relationship to something strong. You build a good foundation for each other, and especially respecting each other's boundaries. Like, you don't want to compromise, your own boundaries for just a person because, you love them in a very hardcore, passionate way, but you need to respect your boundaries and keep those in line so that person doesn't break them. And then, because there's people that come in and they're like, they start breaking those boundaries, and then you don't even notice it at the same time, because you start to, like I said, compromising everything about you, and then you become complacent in their ways. You start to see that this is who I'm just settling with. But you need to put those boundaries first, because those boundaries protect you. Those boundaries will then create such a solid, they create security for you, so you don't get hurt at the end of the day, right? And like I said, I've been cheated on. My boundaries is, there's no line, I don't want anybody cheating on me, and I never will allow it again. And you like I said, and also those boundaries of not being just a person that's, not disrespecting you, and basically throwing, abuse at you, either be physical or emotional or verbal abuse. None of those things should ever, you know ever compromise your boundaries. You got to put your boundaries first. So that's important to me, all of it. And my experience, they've shown me basically that I need to continuously grow. I need to continuously mature in my relationships. So listen to yourself, and then listen to, like I said, professional advice is always key to working on yourself. So it's important to go through that process, and you'll see that, with continuous growth and change, you'll find yourself finding a good partner for yourself. But put yourself first, of course, and work on yourself first. Then that person comes in, and you build a healthy relationship. You build this healthy partnership with somebody. And so I hope this helps. I will continue talking about relationships later. I have more experiences in my life that are truly messed up. I think we all have that, right? But yeah, anyways, I hope you enjoyed. And like I said, if you want to comment or subscribe, I will be posting up more videos in the future. And thank you again for listening. You've been amazing. Okay, have a great day. Bye.